PodSaaS, where we're putting the SaaS back in SaaSy. Sponsored by LeadrPro, where you can book demos with target customers on demand and fill your sales pipeline instantly.
Hi, welcome to another episode of PodSaaS. I'm your host, Chris Shang, and today we have Jonathan from Mindee coming to us from Paris, France. How are you doing, Jonathan?
I'm doing well.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us. Tell us a real quick elevator pitch around what Mindee is and who finds the most value out of Mindee.
Sure. So Mindee is an API for document processing. So basically we help software editors and product team in software company to build document processing automation features in their mobile application, in their desktop application, whatever. Basically we help them build a best user experience by collecting data from documents and instead of asking their users to fill out everything from a document and spend time doing that.
So basically, from what I could gather from your website and kind of just taking a look at the product, it's a way for somebody to just take a picture of something and then aggregate the data as opposed to having to fill out an online form to a certain degree. Yeah,
filling out a form, or you can do whatever you want. Like you can, feed a spreadsheet or store the data in your backend. But yeah, basically we structure data from unstructured documents.
Very cool. It's more of a technical product, so I'm very curious as to your background leading up to starting it. But before we get there, I just want to dive into a series of just rapid fire questions where we get to know Jonathan as the entrepreneur and as the human being. So if you're up for it, we can just dive right in.
Cool.
All right, cool. The first one's a pretty easy one. Ask this to a lot of people and get a lot of different answers, but do you have a favorite entrepreneur or startup story?
I think it's Twilio and Jeff Lawson, the first business to developer great success in the world.
Is there a particular aspect of that story that you find inspiring?
Yeah, the fact that he is a technical guy at first, and he successfully launched a $1 billion startup in this business to developer. I think it was at the beginning something very challenging because the business to developer was not something quite famous or well known by people. So yeah, he must have faced a lot of challenges. And I remember I'd never seen that demo, but apparently he was doing a demo like in live coding in front of everyone. And I can picture myself do that. I would love to have done that. Yeah.
Awesome. Very, very cool. Yeah. I mean, I feel like coding is like its own art form, to a certain degree. And I think that kind of gets lost in translation a lot of times from, what people see on the front end. But it definitely is it's a very artistic skill set from my experience with it. So awesome. Growing up as a kid, I can tell you have a technical background, but did you start off coding at a young age, or did you start off being technical at a young age? Just curious as to what you wanted to be as a kid, in that 8, 9, 10-year-old range.
Yeah, that's funny because it was not related at all with coding or whatever. I've always liked doing stuff on computers, but I wanted to be a surgeon at the beginning, wow. so nothing related to what I'm doing today. Yeah, I think most kids have big dreams on that point, but I think the experience that you have in your first 10 to 20 years old are the most important. And I dropped school actually when I was 16. I was a blue collar in a construction building company, and it was so rough for me. I got back to math, and I opened my first math book at this moment, and that's how I jumped into the science stuff and eventually get into engineering school, because I came back to school a few years after then. That's the moment when I really got this passion about engineering and mathematics, but not when I wanted to be a surgeon.
That's an interesting story. So how old were you when you cracked back open the mathematics book?
Between 16 and 17.
Oh, so you took a year off, you did blue collar work, and then you came back to schooling.
Yeah.
That being said, you've come from a very contrasted background versus I feel like what you do today, right? So one of the things that I ask is, as a founder, you tend to wear a lot of hats. And you pick up a lot of skill sets that you not necessarily thought you would pick up. is there any skill set that you have picked up along the way that you have a love or a hate relationship with, and it could be both, love-hate relationship with, that you never thought that you would pick up along the way, but have a strong emotional disposition towards?
I think everything around firing people and legal stuff also. Yeah, firing people is the worst experience you can have, I think, as a young entrepreneur, especially when you create this relationship with people, and it's you can like them personally, but just not working out, and you have to do that. It's very important to do that in the early days of a company when you are just like about 10, 15 people. It can lead to just a failure if you are not able to do that. So yeah, that's the worst.
Yeah, makes sense. That'll lead into the next question real quick, but going through some of those moments, is there anything that you do to personally decompress from some of the stresses of starting a business?
I haven't found yet, these rituals. I understand that a lot of entrepreneurs have those rituals during the day to just let everything go out, and I don't think I found it yet. Sometimes I do squash, like the sport, that helps, but no, try just to have my co-founders close to me is very important also, because we can help each other. That's the best source of
having a sounding board to provide some sanity in those tough moments.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. What has been a painful experience, or your most painful experience? And I'll preface this in the sense of, I feel like a lot of growth, whether personally or professionally, tends to stem from being in very uncomfortable situations where you're forced to really think outside of the box and come up with your most probably creative, like problem solving ideas, right? So I feel like, coming from those places of discomfort or painful experiences can come a tremendous or exponential amount of growth. Has there been any situation like that for you that you can refer back to?
Yeah, so when we created Mindee, it was in 2018. For the first 6 to 9 months, we have been doing some consulting missions to bootstrap the company. I didn't want to raise fund right away before we have found a first idea of real product. So we have been doing this 6 to 9 months of consulting missions, and we've hired a few people thanks to the money we got in the bank. And everything went down at the moment. Like, all the missions were not going to be successful, etc. And we had 2 weeks of cash before I would have had to fire. It was only 2 or 3 people, but it was my first time as an entrepreneur, as a CEO. And during those 2 weeks, I think I had just like 3-4 hours of sleep per day, just because I was so stressed out. Just trying to sleep and think of, okay, what am I gonna do right now? And I didn't know anything about raising money myself, but we had a few intros with angels. And at this moment, I was so focused on raising funds that the first checks went pretty smoothly during that time period. I think I discovered that I could raise money, and that I actually, I love, I think, pitching my company to people and trying to make them, feel the excitation, the long-term vision about this. So I think this is because of this particular moment, but this was definitely the 2 worst week of my entire professional experience.
Yeah, for sure. I can only imagine, and I do feel like, having done 30 plus of these conversations, there's at least a third of them that have gone through some version of that, where you're about to run out of runway, and it's not even like the personal burden, right? Like, you can go back out, you can find a job, especially if you're a technical person, but the responsibility, I feel like, to kind of the mission, the vision that you've already proposed, if you do have employees, even if it's a small team, it's you take a lot of that responsibility on personally, and it's it is definitely like a ding to your own efforts and what what you're passionate about. So I get that. Another quick question here: Do you have a situation, like we talked about that painful moment, or is that a reference point, or is there another reference point when you're like in the 25th hour, in those moments when you're backed up against the wall, or maybe like during those 2-week period, what motivated you to get up every day, even though you're sleeping 3 to 4 hours, like let's say like after that first week already being super stressed out, like what's pushing you, day in and day out to do that? And I'm sure you've also encountered difficult moments since then, where maybe it's not as hard and you have that as a motivator, you already got through that. But was there anything particularly you would refer back to, again, like personally or professionally, that helped push you over that hump?
I think many things. Yeah. First, my co-founder Mohamed. We are four co-founders. Yeah, there are two of them came just a little after the creation of the company, but I started with Mohamed, and he started the company in conditions that I would have never been able to do, like in terms of personal lifestyle. So he followed me at this moment, and I was thinking of him like following me, and like at this moment I can't let him down like that. I have to change something and to find something. So that's the first thing related to Mindee. And the second is my parents are coming from a very small city right in the middle of France, and I think I'm still doing a bit of everything I do for them just because I want to someday be able to provide for them, and so they can have their late days very smoothly and peacefully. So they have worked all their life with some very hard work, I think, and so I was motivated also for them. So it was not hard actually to get up in the morning. The family, the friends, everything. It's easy to find inspiration and to get up and go to work. Yeah.
Cool. Last question here before we kind of just jump into the conversation of how you started Mindee. But it's the idea around, what kind of legacy do you want to leave behind when you leave this earth? And I know it can be kind of misconstrued as like self-serving to a certain degree, but another way to think about it is maybe like what kind of impact you want to leave on this planet before you leave it.
First impact, I think, and the most important for me, is to my family. So I'm married. I don't have kids yet, but when I will have kids, I would like to provide them with an ecosystem where they can just be as happy as they could be, can do whatever they want, but just a happy family is the best legacy I can leave after that. And maybe a technological breakthrough if we talk about more the professional stuff. I feel like what we are doing can really change the way people are, like the workflows, around a lot of different processes. I think we can change something just because most of the document and the paper doesn't make any sense anymore. We do a lot of deep learning and all technological stuff. So I would like to enable developers doing more resources, more efficient, a bit shady. I don't know how to explain exactly,
that
but
makes a ton of sense.
The technical challenge is something very important for me.
Yeah, I feel like it's almost like bridging the gap between technical and practicality. For developers, where they may not have time savings for them to be able to take something to market faster by being able to provide that bridge, right? I get that, and that's definitely a noble effort to kind of to lead on, spear on. Cool. I'd love to dive in because you mentioned a few things here that I was excited to talk about. But coming from as a child wanting to be a surgeon, then taking a year off, doing manual labor, not just blue collar work, but working in construction, right? And then coming back, going back to school or learning back to academics and being more inspired in the engineering side of things. Walk me through that process from making a decision to take a year off and doing something that's almost it's almost, I would imagine you have a lot of time to think because it is manual labor. So it's and I find that it can be therapeutic to a certain degree too, and helps providing a direction or finding moments of clarity for yourself. But then how do you get from that to make a decision to be I'm going to go into engineering?
I dropped at 16 because the main reason is I was a very bad student in whatever classes, mathematics or whatever. I was, a very bad student. And my father was running people company, and they were installing lifts, like elevators on the construction site. So he told me, like, come with me if you want. I said, okay. I don't even know why I'm going to school. This little crisis when you're a teenager. And after just a few weeks, I realized it was so hard to do manual stuff all day long for not a good salary in the end. And we were going everywhere in France, so we were not sleeping at home because we are always in a hotel, so you don't have any social life. I asked myself the right questions at this moment, like, what do you want to do? Do you want to do that like all your life, or do you want to do something else? And the only thing that came up to my mind at this moment was mathematics and science. So I picked up the book that I had from school and started to learn about mathematics and physics, etc. And I don't know why, but I definitely got passionate about that. So it was pretty clear for me that I should go back to school. But in the end, my father offered me to join his company. So how do you tell that to your father? So it's been a 1-year process for me just to say, okay, I'm going to tell him. And someday I told him. And at this moment, actually, when I told him like that, I'm going to go back to school because what you do, I cannot do that. Sorry, it's not. It's super work. You are doing so great, but it's so hard for me. I cannot do that all my life. And at this moment, I think I realized that, okay, I made such a big decision. It was so hard to tell my father, I'm going to go back to school and I'm going to leave you right now and just to go back to school, that failure was not an option for the next few years. So I was first in class in every class that I could have during the second degree. Then I got in preparatory program and I went into the best engineering school in France, like École Polytechnique. And all of that because of this year, because I was a bad student and because I told my father that I'm going to stop working with you. And all the science stuff, then I think it gave me this kind of entrepreneurship mindset also, trying to build things, to do things by myself and only things that I like. So yeah, I co-founded a startup. I was CTO in there when I was still student, and I was CTO in another startup after that. And at the end, like I wanted to just build my own company, and that's how we get to start Mindee.
That story I think is very relatable in a lot of ways because I think a lot of people might be going down not just 1 year, but 5, 10, 15 years down this path of not thinking anything else is possible. And I feel like, especially because you were a bad student, you could have very easily accepted like that's my outcome. And if I were to go back to school, I'm still going to be a bad student. But it was like something clicked in that year where you had this perspective shift. And it's that perspective shift and then going back to school and being the top student and then going to the top engineering school, like that in and of itself, is a mental shift, not necessarily like smarts or like, IQ testing, none of those like binary types of things, but it's really more, I feel like some kind of mental growth or emotional growth in that year-long period that triggered this lifelong journey that's changed your life to a certain degree. So, but I think every entrepreneur that I've spoken to has had that inflection point in their life. None of the ones that I've spoken to are like those kids straight out of college, like drop out of college and then start a $1 billion business, right? Like it's always been something where they've gone through, they've lived life, they've had some domain expertise in what they're building, and then found a better way to do something that they had to encounter as a pain point, and then scale that into a legitimate SaaS business. That being said, you mentioned that it seems like you started off your entrepreneur journey while you were in school, being a CTO in a couple of companies. What led you to then starting Mindee? What was the impetus for that, the idea behind it? And then let alone, making that investment of time and resources to then developing the idea?
At first, I thought that CTO was the right place for me because of this passion in software engineering and science and technology in general. I realized actually after 4 or 5 years as CTO that I was interested in every aspect of a startup, like marketing, product, sales, everything. And I think I'm always looking for learning more. And being a CEO is the best place to be if you want to learn every day more new stuff. it was pretty obvious to me that I should build my own company, just because I wanted to touch all the aspects, and building this culture. It's also super important to me. I realized that alongside working on marketing, product, tech, etc., trying to find people and find the people you are going to spend your journey with is something super important. I like doing interviews. I like spending time with employees in the company. I'm still running like the training session about the product for any new sales employees. So that's something I really enjoyed. And as a CTO, you have your technical team, but you cannot see so many people and interact with them on a daily basis with all the companies. So that was very obvious to me. Like, not easy to jump, because CTO, CEO, it's kind of different. Yeah. And I always had this feeling of, this imposter syndrome. Like, you are a CTO, you're an engineer. Why would you be running a company? And of course you can. Like, technical founders are kind of, well, it's good to be a technical founder also. Yeah. But at this moment, that was my only concern or insecurity, I would say. Like, am I going to be able to ramp up on sales? How am I going to sell to my first client? Those are the type of questions I've never asked before, and that was really tough. But yeah, we did it well in the end, and I am super happy I did that jump, because I need to renew my skill set every 3 to 6 months now, and that's perfect. That's exactly what I was looking for.
And so where was the idea from Mindee come from? Or when did it start?
We started together, as I told you, with Mohamed. He was deep learning researcher in computer vision at INRIA in France. And I wanted to build an API first company. I think it's the future of software. Mm-hmm. So, this 6 to 9 months consulting part of the company was actually to bootstrap and generate a bit of revenue without raising funds. But it was mainly also to understand what people wanted to build, like the skills of computer vision. What will they do? And in the end, 95% of them were asking us something around document processing, because I want to pass passports, tax returns, ID documents, certificate of incorporation, birth, whatever, receipt, invoices, etc. And this is how we discovered that there was a big hole in the market, and there was something to do, like right at this spot, like developer tool in document processing. And the first client we got was Luca. It's an HRIS software. They have this expense management module, and we've built our first prototype for them. Won the benchmark against Abi, the giant OCR Russian company. And with that first client, we raised the $3 million seed round, and then the ball was rolling.
I think this is something that's a lot of people miss, which is getting to product market fit. And it's almost like you reverse engineer the process, because you went out to the market and you're basically, you gave me stats too. So it's like, I could tell that you did your homework, you researched the market, you knew who the end user was based on your experience, your co-founder's experience, right? Like, you guys knew how to talk that language and the lingo. So you know who you're going to try to sell to. But it's like figuring out from that market that you have comfortability with, and you maybe have already relationships with, what it is what need that they had. So how did you go about discovering that? Like, what was the process for you to get to that 95% number, or like to understand that this is what the market needs? Because I think that's something that a lot of people miss. Even like founders are building a product, they don't even go back to, they don't ask the market, to substantiate it a lot of the times. I don't know if that's out of fear or what have you, but maybe that's part of like the technical side of you. But I feel like that's a great story to share.
Imagine a product just by ourselves and okay, go bold on this product. This is not our mindset, I think. We are way more pragmatical. And in the end, this first client wanted to pay. They gave us money to help us build our API. Like, it could have been a failure, and they would have just wasted money, but they paid us for doing the R&D so that they could pay us in the future when we have our product. That was the biggest, the strongest signal that I could get from the market. And they were not alone. There were other clients like that. So that process, I think, if I redo a company later on, I will do exactly the same process for the first client, like make them pay for something very close to what you are building. Like make them pay for the R&D of your product, because if this is interesting for us and you explain us well what's your product on just a Figma file, or just a few slides, if you can make them pay for that, then your product will get some traction, some initial traction. I'm not saying it's going to do everything. We could have done, I don't know, process the document manually. I could have just opened an API gateway, and we could have done video coding behind our laptop to all the documents coming from it. It would have been also some kind of validation. This first client was the most important, because on the 95% of people that were asking something around documents, we haven't this idea of use case at first. It was totally new to me. Like, what is a use case actually? Like one of the things I was talking about just before, jumping from CTO to CEO. I didn't know what it was, but they were very, very interesting to us, because they explained us everything around expense management, like how does it work, who is the user persona, what is going to be integrated, etc. And yeah, big thank you to Luca at this first client, because they enabled us to build it.
When do you get to a signal where you personally feel, okay, we really have something? This isn't just a need for a handful of companies. This is not a blip on the radar. This is something that has huge upside and market potential. And then going out and I believe you raised a Series A too, right? So getting the confidence and getting the customer base and the traction to get to that point.
In May 2019, we have this first client in beta version. They pay us a few thousands monthly to help to use our service. And we raised this seed round. We've been working on the product until January before at this moment, we start selling a bit more. And we realized that in the expense management use case, this is the first use case. Like, there are a lot of prospects. There are a lot of lookalike for this particular company. So we have a nice traction, but not an explosive traction during 2020. But what we have done is that we have released a few other endpoints on our API to pass invoices, to pass ID documents, etc. And we have been working a lot on the business model and trying to think, okay, what is the most frictionless sales process that we can imagine to serve our clients. And we have been iterating a few on that. So we went from one client in January 2020 to, I think, 30-ish clients by the end of 2020, with low volumes, so not explosive ARR, but nice growth in terms of logo acquisition. I think this inflection point came like during 2021. So in January, we do Y Combinator, where I start the fundraising process in February, March, and we raised in June. And by September last year, we have 70 clients. And during this year, we took a look at the cohorts and what people were building and what they were doing. And we realized that after 1 year, each of our clients is generating between 200 and 600% of their initial commitments. So very strong traction, very strong net retention rate. And we also realized that all the clients that committed with an enterprise plan, like a commitment, none of them have churned since the beginning. So at this moment, this was pretty clear to me. Just before the Series A and just after the Series A, that's the time period where we realized, okay, at this moment, we have a product market fit. Just no churn and a lot of traction and a strong net retention rate. So yeah, it was not so binary. It was not like someday I jump out of my bed and okay, oh man, we found the product market fit. No,
no, I get it.
It was by building the slides for the deck. It was by pitching VCs and understanding the metrics of our business. But yeah, definitely on these use cases, the financial services use cases, I think we have a strong product market fit.
So, with where you are in the business, right? Like, where do you foresee it going in the next 5 years, right? Like, do you foresee yourself trying to find, an exit, or do you foresee yourself like really committing to the long haul of, reaching the potential of what you feel Mindee could become? Do you have any idea in terms of like what you have a preference towards?
I've always tried to picture myself in a deal, an M&A deal where people are just writing a check, a very big check to you. I think your mindset can change a bit at this particular moment. Today, I really don't want to do that because if I were to sell my company in a few years, I think I would like to build another one, and this is the one I want to build because everything is so great. Like it's a developer tool in the space with a very huge market and great people. I don't feel like I could do that twice in a row. So I'm not going to look for any M&A or trying to find an exit. I think we will try to dive as much as we can in the market and to get this position of the next Twilio, like the Twilio for document processing, maybe.
Yeah.
And that will be the dream for me, not selling the company in 5 years.
In that said, like what's kind of like been, I guess, some of the biggest learning exercises that you've came out of this entire process? You mentioned, that you don't think that you could strike this twice. What makes you, what have you learned along the way that, maybe things that you found like, hey, we got lucky here, or, we really spent the time doing this process and, and it really paid off. Like, I guess, what I'm trying to get at is any piece of advice for maybe other technical founders that are out there that maybe are wearing that CTO hat and just kind of like feel the same thing that you had mentioned before of like this idea of imposter syndrome, despite the fact that they're inherently curious about a lot of facets of running a startup? That's
a tough question because I think it's really personal experience, and I don't know if I would have any advice for other people. Something I would have liked to understand maybe faster in the process is this part of the ambition. Like I was kind of afraid to be ambitious because of this imposter syndrome. So I think maybe I could have been even a bit faster if I hadn't this. If I haven't been afraid like that, like personal, it's a personal stuff. Like for finding an advice for everyone is very tough question. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, no, but I think you hit it though. That fear of making the jump is very, very real. And it's something that I think every entrepreneur has to make. And some people who, aspire to be entrepreneurs just never make that jump. And it is a personal thing. It is very personal. And, I don't know what the motivators are or what triggers that in somebody to do it versus somebody who doesn't. There are people who do it much, much later in life too, in a different way, right? But then, they may not have maximized on what their potential could have been at the same time. So I think it's really like the point of the question, I think, is just to kind of get your, if there was anything that you could reflect upon that, even though you were fearful, you did make the jump, right, to becoming a CEO, and what pushed you, maybe it is that curiosity and you couldn't stop it from like, impeding into your mind constantly, right? And I think that's relatable. That's relatable to maybe like another CTO where they're just sitting there, and if they hear your story, they'd be like, you know what, I'm gonna do it at some point, might as well do it now. And maybe you're gonna help them shortcut it, like maybe 6 months, maybe a year, even if it's a few months, that's gonna help them get the ball rolling so they're not lagging, to what they could get to sooner. And I think that's the thing. A lot of us try to find these stories at the end of the day, and that's the reason for this podcast too. Is like, I think the goal is to just share the stories, the personal journeys of these different founders and entrepreneurs such as yourself, because there's others out there like you that are going through similar experiences or have gone through similar experiences. The more conversations I've had, that's been the common theme, is that there are common themes around founders. So in any regard, I think that was really great to kind of end on that note, because I think you gave advice without even knowing that you gave advice. And it was really interesting to kind of just hear your journey too, from, again, being somebody who was looking to be a surgeon and then went to work with his dad in a labor situation, and then found your calling ultimately, which is fantastic. Even at still a young age, to find your calling and realize the potential of what that calling was. And yeah, I have nothing but a lot of respect for you, and congrats on the success so far. I know it's not easy. I mean, you got to pat yourself on the back, because at the end of the day, like, it's as difficult as like being a founder in your position, having lasted past 3 years into the 4-year mark, raising a seed and Series A round. I mean, it's part of less than 2% of like companies that go out there and start. It's as difficult as being an actor or like being a rock star, in my opinion, sometimes, but it doesn't carry the same cachet. So I think like that there's a lot to be said in and of itself. So congrats on that. Excited to see where you guys end up in the next few years here, and I can definitely see the vision. Being the Twilio for document processing it's an ambitious goal, but I wish you a lot of success in it.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Thank you so much.